Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, where you can get everything you need to make mom feel special. For breakfast in bed or a surprise brunch, they've got fresh fruits and gorgeous flowers to help celebrate mom. Get started in the Safeway app.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Tonight is the last time this spring that the sun will set before 8 p.m. And that is a nice reminder that summertime is right around the corner. So cheers to that. And for any of you who play volleyball at Cheeseman Park in Denver, I'll probably be bumping into you sometime soon. I'm Nrel Perez-Esquivel, former volleyball master in the 3rd grade. Coming up, research and development for renewable energy took a hit yesterday with layoffs at Nrel in Golden. Then, a real case of ballot fraud, but not to swing the election.
In 2 decades of covering elections in this state, he had not seen one solitary instance of anything like this happening.
Also, the latest on plans for 2 office towers to become apartments in Denver.
We've done plenty of them across the country.
And a new exhibition about the old Cambodian empire is captivating the local Cambodian community.
I'm very proud, I'm very excited.
It is Tuesday, May 6th. Here's the news in Colorado today. "114 people got laid off from the National Renewable Energy Lab in Golden yesterday. The lab was originally meant to develop solar power, and in recent years, it's also worked on more sustainable airplane fuel, figuring out how the ocean could capture carbon, and other things. CPR's Ishan Thakur is reporting on the new layoffs in the age of Trump. Ishan, what is behind these layoffs, and do you know who's affected?
Nrel's leadership says it will shift to supporting, quote, critical priorities, though it doesn't say exactly what those are. I just saw the U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright, who's from Colorado and he oversees Nrel. He was at Nrel last month, and there he told reporters that he's focused on bringing down energy costs across the country, and he doesn't think the focus on renewables in general has done that. This is what he said when he was asked about layoffs at the entire Department of Energy.
This is the hardest part of my job. In the last 4 years when I walked in, the headcount in the Department of Energy grew 20%. So 20% growth in the government, and mostly what we got out of it was a little bit more restrictions in energy production around the country. We got more energy subtraction, not any meaningful energy addition.
He also said he wants to do his part to bring down the size of the federal government.
Okay, for context, what is the history of Nrel over these last almost 50 years? Is this the first time it's ever been scaled back?
So it's not the first time Nrel's being scaled back. So it originally started as a solar research institute in the aftermath of the 1970s oil crisis. But the Reagan administration drastically cut its funding before George H.W. Bush actually elevated the lab to the status of national laboratory. But the second Bush administration tried to trim it again. So overall, Nrel is the country's primary lab for renewable energy technology, and it gets most of its funding through a special agreement from the federal government.
How do these layoffs fit in the bigger picture of cuts to climate-focused federal jobs in Colorado?
Nrel's cuts are likely just one step. We're unsure what other budget impacts or layoffs are coming down the pike. The Trump administration's budget blueprint aims to slash funding for what they call the Green New Scam, and that targets the office that oversees Nrel with deep cuts. That blueprint, though, is just proposed. It's not final. In a statement yesterday, Representative Joe Neguse said, quote, "From NOAA to NIST and now Nrel, this administration's relentless attacks on the federal workforce continue to have disastrous impacts on our state's hardworking scientists and researchers." He says he'll do what he can to fight further cuts.
CPR's Ishan Thakur. Thank you.
Thanks, Arlo.
A woman in western Colorado admitted in court yesterday that she stole ballots ahead of the 2024 election. But according to her, she wasn't doing it to try and swing the election. CPR's Tom Hess has followed the case. Tom, obviously voter fraud was a huge topic of conversation this past few national elections, but there were very few reports of actual fraud taking place. So what happened in Mesa County?
You know how in Colorado, when you get your ballots in the mail, you can also get notifications. They tell you when your ballot's on the way, and they tell you when your ballot's gotten back to them. Well, a number of voters got a message that, hey, their ballot's being processed. The problem was they'd never received their ballot in the first place. So district attorney's office investigates, and they notice the victims were all kind of clustered in the same area of town. And eventually they arrested and charged 2 women with stealing more than a dozen or so ballots before they could be delivered to voters.
Oh, interesting. And did the votes end up counting?
3 of them actually did make it through the whole process and get into the pool of votes that were actually counted. Now, all the people who had their ballots stolen got new ones and they could vote, but those 3 did get through.
Okay, so tell me about these women. Who are they and why did they do it?
So Vicki Stewart was the one in court yesterday. She was a former postal employee, and she was actually on the route where these ballots were taken. So she had easy access to the ballots and to the mailboxes.
Oh, wow.
And then the other is Sally Maxton, who's a friend of Stewart's. They told authorities in the fall that they'd kind of come up with this scheme to see if the state's voter system really checked out and if the securities were really what they said they were. Now, the Secretary of State's office said that the election judge that reviewed and approved those 3 ballots that made it through, it was the same person for all of them. They got taken off that and reassigned.
So then what happens to these women in the mailbox case?
Well, the court system kind of just moves apace. Stewart is set to be sentenced in June. Maxton is due in court later this week, actually. But for as normal as the court proceedings are now, I cannot stress how unusual all of this was, particularly at the time. Last fall, as this whole thing was coming out, we talked to the head of the County Clerks Association, and he said in 2 decades of covering elections in this state, he had not seen one solitary instance of anything like this happening.
Unusual is definitely the way to put it. Tom, thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Could office buildings be the solution to the housing crisis? Ever since the pandemic, office space in downtown Denver has emptied out, and that empty real estate and the rising housing demand has some investors trying to convert them into housing. In Denver, real estate firm Luzaro Company recently bought a whole city block with 2 towers and plans to create hundreds of affordable apartments. The buildings would include other residential staples like a daycare, gym, restaurant, market, and even parking garage. But are conversions even possible?
They've always been a challenge. However, they're very doable.
Architect Josie Hyde is with Gensler and has researched this.
We've done plenty of them across the country. And really what it takes is finding the right buildings. For us here in Denver, we actually, with these 70s, 80s buildings, we have about 80% of the buildings that are suitable that we studied through the city and county of Denver.
Hyde's firm is working with city planners who want to revitalize downtown. Hyde is seeing more real estate companies grab new opportunities.
And some of the things to look for are great floor plate, whether it's fairly regular in size. How far the windows are from the elevators is important because if they're too far away, then you won't be able to get light into the apartments.
Because there's just too much living space too deep inside the building.
So that's really critical. And also thinking of the floor-to-floor heights are always great for office buildings. So when we convert them to residential, they already have taller ceilings. So those are the types of things we look at throughout all of our buildings that we study.
Also critical, whether the outside of the building, what Hyde calls the skin, needs to be replaced.
So we look at the cost of what that would take to either partially change out some of the windows to be operable or whether the entire building needs to be reskinned, as we say.
Balconies can be added sometimes. Ultimately, Denver's Downtown Development Authority wants Upper Downtown to resemble Lodo with complete neighborhoods. And this dream has been made easier for developers with new government help.
With the permitting process that the mayor has just signed an executive order, I think we've got a lot of opportunities here to speed up the process and get these built.
You can hear more with Josie Hyde in the Colorado Matters podcast. The link is in our show notes. There's a new exhibition that you can see at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. It'll teach you about Cambodia and the community of Cambodians that's right here on the Front Range. It also connects that community to their homeland. Bozzy spoke with Denverite's Kevin Beatty, who has the inside story.
Kevin, can you tell us how this community has built up here in Colorado?
Definitely. So I met a family recently, the Ohm family. And Chanrith and Chanbo Ohm lived in Cambodia in Southeast Asia through civil war and a Communist Party genocide in the 1970s. And in 1981, they fled. They came to Colorado and they knew right away they needed to build a place for other refugees. And so they did things like building Buddhist temples along the Front Range and really tried to create spaces for the community to come together. And since then, they've been able to return to Cambodia only once. But then this exhibition opened at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science.
And so the Ohms have visited the exhibition. What did they think?
It was emotional. I'll let Chanrith say it.
I'm very proud. I'm very excited because this is where I came from. So when I saw that, look like I'm in Cambodia. Because everything remind me in my mind is exactly when we were young. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, this exhibition is about more than simply nostalgia for him. The family told me that it feels like a validation of their 40-plus year work to establish their presence here, and a way to keep younger generations tied to this history and their culture.
It certainly sounds exciting. Kevin, can you describe a little of what's on display?
There are over 100 artifacts from the 150-square-mile Angkor complex of temples and ruins. A lot of Hindu idols, stone statues, models that show off the ruins' sophisticated architecture. The exhibition is super immersive, a lot of nice lighting and sound design that makes you really feel like you're there in the jungle. I met Tiffany Khan, who's Cambodian, and she went to the exhibition.
It definitely choked me up, too, because I was born there, and hearing the sound of that place, the sound that they had with the birds, and then seeing the artifacts, that was really nice.
Kevin, I understand you met Tiffany Khan at a Buddhist temple in Adams County when you were photographing Khmer New Year celebrations.
That's right. And when I say the Ohm family worked for decades to establish their community, this is what I meant. It's a little temple and a little home in a neighborhood just off Federal Boulevard. And this was a really big holiday, the kind of event that brings everyone out for food and ceremony.
Happy Cambodian New Year!
People brought food for the monks stationed there, just endless plates of noodles and veggies, roast duck, soup. The museum exhibition played into this scene. Tony Ohm, Chanrith's son, said all the excitement over its opening this year has attracted way more of the community back to big events like this. And he said it's helping them maintain a sense of pride.
How did this exhibition come about, and how do we have it here in Denver?
That's a really interesting story in and of itself. Big picture, there are ongoing conversations about repatriating Cambodian artifacts. A lot were stolen from the Angkor complex during that period of civil war there, and items ended up in museums around the world, including the Denver Art Museum. The Cambodian government has been working to get those back, and now that they have, officials wanted to bring them on tour to places like Denver with all that context about that journey. So the Cambodian government offered this show to the Museum of Nature and Science, who then engaged the local Cambodian community.
Sounds amazing. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks for having me.
If you want to experience the sights and sounds of Angkor, the lost empire of Cambodia, it runs through late August.
Hey, thank you for listening. Reporting for today's show also came from CPR's Andrea Dukakis. If you value this kind of storytelling, one that connects you to Mesa County and all the way to Cambodia, consider supporting this podcast. There's a donation link in our show notes. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, where you can get everything you need to make mom feel special. For breakfast in bed or a surprise brunch, they've got fresh fruits and gorgeous flowers to help celebrate mom. Get started in the Safeway app.